Hey friends, I've really enjoyed reading these nonfiction books about history, little times in history that you might not know much about. And a lot of them I haven't known that much about, and I've learned some more. This one's called All of a Sudden and Forever Help and Healing After the Oklahoma City Bombing. So in 1995, a guy got a truck, filled it up with a bomb, and then drove it in front of one of the federal buildings in Oklahoma City. And then he left, and the truck blew up and caused major, major damage and devastation. So that this book is about kind of what happened afterwards and how people started to heal. And the author's name is Chris Barton. He's married to a friend of mine. He lives in Austin, Texas. That's where I'm from. And the illustrations are by Nicole Xu. And this is also, I know about the incident, but I don't really know much about what happened afterwards. So I thought this was kind of an interesting book. Sometimes bad things happen and you have to tell everyone. Sometimes terrible things happen and everybody knows. One April morning in 1995, one of those terrible things happened in Oklahoma City. There was a man with a bomb in a big truck. He parked the truck in front of a big building in the middle of the city and he walked away, and the bomb exploded. Here's the truck. "168 people died. All of a sudden and forever, so much was ruined. The awfulness of that moment can never be undone, but the awfulness of that moment is not the end of the story." So if you can remember, he was parked about right here, and it blew the whole front of the building off, basically. The bomber's name is Timothy McVeigh. It is true that many people were hurt in many, many ways. Some lost a cousin, a niece, a nephew, an uncle, an aunt, a grandfather, grandmother, sister, brother, mother, father, a daughter, a son, a baby named but not yet born. Some lost friends, neighbors, folks they used to see every week or every day. This is what it looks like a little more up close. It is true as well that some who survived had their bodies broken in ways large and small. Some suffered damage to their minds and spirits. Some who rushed in to help saw horrible things they would never forget. Some had to leave nearby places they loved, homes, churches, a library, without knowing when they could possibly return safely. And it's true that some found their lives flooded with anger, grief, or fear. Some came under suspicion for no good reason. Some had to accept that their own child was a bomber or had kept secrets from someone who was. Some lost hope that anything would ever be okay again. Many, many people around the world watched the tragedy and felt their own hearts break. And then all at once, and then, not all at once, but one by one, they turned to look at other things instead. But it's also true that all the while one tree stood near the bomb building. This tree, an American elm, had not been much to look at before the bombing, though it did give off some shade. The blast had scorched the elm, blown debris into its branches, and left it looking worse than ever. Investigators collecting evidence considered cutting down the tree, but it was spared. It received help. Even after the building was gone, the tree survived. During the next year, people dealt with the pain in different ways, but healing doesn't always come easily. Many whose lives had been changed by the bombing asked why. Why me? Why us? Why them? Why? While waiting for an answer that may never come, many vowed to remember. They vowed to tell their stories. If you remember from the one we read about Nagasaki, the woman in that story also wanted to tell her story, because it's important to let people know about tragedies and how you heal and how you recover and the effects things like this have on people. Their stories would keep alive those they had lost. Those stories told and retold would make sure the past had a place in the present. Many learned to piece their lives back together, even when important parts were gone forever. Some needed lots of help, and they received it from lots of people. Some of these helpers themselves were hurting, maybe from the bombing, maybe from something else that had happened to them before. Helpers often know how it feels to be in need, and they know from their own difficult times what kinds of aid might be needed. Families, survivors, and helpers came together. They talked, they listened, they cried, and sometimes even laughed. They fixed, they made right what they could and began looking to the future. Some took solace under the elm tree that had survived. When the next spring came and new seeds fell from the survivor tree's branches, someone thought to collect them. Something could be done with those. I always think of trees as kind of a symbol of hope and new life, so they're collecting the seeds. I wonder what they're going to do with them. The seeds were taken to a nursery where other helpers planted them, not all at once, but a few seeds at a time. While the seeds sprouted and grew, so did plans for a memorial at the place of the bombing. It would be a monument to those who had been lost, but also to the community of those still living. None of them had been hurt in exactly the same way, yet they could all seek some healing in this space they had in common. As time went by, they each might encounter others in their lives on occasion or every morning, ready for them to just move on, to stop being sad, to stop being angry, to stop being hurt. At the memorial site, they believed they would always find someone willing to listen. They could always find someone willing to be with them. This was especially true each anniversary. When they gathered there for the second one, they found more than listeners, friends, and loved ones. They found survivor tree seedlings grown from the seeds harvested the previous spring. There were enough seedlings for families of all those who had died to take one home to plant. So it's pretty amazing that this tree survived this damage, and now they're going to plant seeds to remember the person that they loved who they don't have anymore. In front yards and backyards were everyday comings and goings mixed with memories before the bombing. Those seedlings took root and started to grow. Sometimes those elm trees were reminders of loss. Sometimes they were sources of comfort. Sometimes they were both. Many people whose lives had been changed by the bombing found new connections with each other. These included friendships, other close relationships, and at least one marriage that never would have happened if not for that terrible something that they wish had never happened at all. After 5 years, the memorial opened to the public, followed by a museum. The stories they told brought visitors from around the world. A new crop of seeds got collected each spring. Over the next year, they would sprout into seedlings. At the anniversary gathering the following April, those seedlings would go to more new homes, further and further from the original tree. So they built this memorial on the ground where the building was that blew up. The point of a memorial is for you to keep in mind things that have happened and to remember people that have been lost. And when other terrible things happen, they just do. We can't stop them all. When these other terrible things happened and people died or were hurt or had their lives changed, all of a sudden and forever, they received help too. Sometimes that help came from Oklahoma City. Some of those who had needed so much help after the bombing, even some of those who still needed help themselves, came forward. They provided comfort to those hurting in other families, other cities, other states, other nations. They listened to the stories of others. They shared their own, and before they returned home to Oklahoma City, sometimes they left behind a reminder of that comfort. Sometimes they left behind a seedling from the survivor tree. You know, when you're really hurt or sad, having someone listen to you and show they care is a really big thing. There will be a time many, many years from now when these people whose lives changed on the instant of the Oklahoma City bombing will no longer be with us. Not all at once, but as decades pass, they will be gone. Likewise, the survivor tree itself will not live forever. No tree ever does. But its seedlings have been planted near and far. Those have grown into trees that have given off their own seeds, and just as the survivor tree's offspring have spread, so has the story of this tree and its survival. In various ways, this one tree with a meaningful place in our past will always be with us. So that's pretty neat. They've taken the seeds and planted it all over, even though the tree won't live forever. Its seed will grow and will continue having new seeds and new growth. The same is true of the people who first took solace from the from the survivor tree. After they were gone, some of those they comforted will remain among us, continuing to comfort others, who themselves will comfort still others, and who will be around to comfort still more. And because of those stories so many of us have shared, we will remember the help so many needed. We'll remember the help so many received, and we'll remember the help so many provided. We will remember. So, a lot of these nonfiction stories will have more information in the back, and I really can't read all of it. But here's a picture of the building, the federal building in Oklahoma City that they blew up. And here's a picture of the tree. And here's a picture of the tree after it was taken care of, after the bombing was over. And all this is more information that you can read if you're interested in finding out more. You know, what I do often when I read books like this is I like to look online, and so you can look up the Oklahoma City bombing and read more about it and see the pictures if you'd like to. And they're also talking about the research they did. If you like research, it'll tell you a little bit about it. I hope you like that story. It's not really as much of a story as some. It is talking about how important it is to help each other when trauma happens, and how memorials can give us a place of solace. Solace means peace, basically. And anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you get a chance to look up more information about it. And that's it. Happy reading, friends.